Oh sure, I know it's not Halloween, but it's my channel, so I can talk about haunted houses whenever I want. And besides, as Michael Flynn said in my favorite ghost story of all times, Mammy Morgan played the organ, the dead walk the earth all days, not just Halloween. So there. Seriously though, I don't think there's a culture or lore or fairy tale, group of fairy tales where there isn't some type of a haunted house theme. There's stories about them, the documentaries about them, there are movies about them, there are cities where there are tours of haunted houses, and now there are adventure games based on the haunted house theme. The first one I want to talk about, the Mortlake Mansion, it's a little bit more on a childish side, a little bit more primitive, and I think it's geared more toward hidden object lovers rather than adventure game lovers. That said, it's not a bad game, it's fun. It has some interesting twists and turns. From the hidden object scene standpoint, it's very, it's actually quite challenging. So that's a lot of fun. And also in terms of collecting the components for the solutions of the larger puzzles and making progress in the game. One of the things that I really, really love about Mortlake Mansion is that it has by far my favorite game map, because there are games where you have a map that tells you where you have possible tasks. There are games where the map can transport you to any portion of the game, any scene of the game. This one has both. And that is the kind of map that I, as a gamer, like to see in an adventure game, especially when it's an extensive, large area with lots of different scenes and such. So really love that one. Lots of fun. And the one thing that I really like with the map, again going with that, is that it's not deceptive. It's not when it tells you there is a task to be performed in the room, you have to go there and really, really look, move things around until you have found what it is to find. It never lies to you. There really usually is something to do wherever it tells you. So fun thing that, again, the graphics are a little bit primitive, the villain is a little bit hokey, but also lots of good elements and a pretty decent story in the game. I'm hoping that one of these days they will remake it, or maybe make a sequel to it with a little bit more sophisticated graphics and movement, and then it would be a really awesome piece to play. The second game I want to talk about, Vampireville. I wanted initially to include it into the vampire game reviews, but really the story is much more about this old forsaken castle than about the fact that some of the inhabitants just happen to be vampires. That game is great fun, very humorous. It doesn't really attempt to be scary. It is kind of a spoof on all the horror movies and horror games of that genre. Lots of really funny elements, lots of good laughs, but at the same time it is a good, solid, challenging hidden object and adventure game. You really have to sort of think about things. There's a lot of things that are not straightforward. Finding the objects, putting them together, executing the actions that are required to complete a certain chapter. All that stuff is pretty well done and pretty challenging. So definitely worth looking at. The last but not the least is a spin on the old story. It is the Sherlock Holmes, The Hound of the Baskervilles. And while those of us who have read the book and watched the movies, we know that in the original novel, it was not at all anything supernatural. It was a crime perpetrated by a human being with the help of some imaginative techniques and some research. This particular one, while a very solid nod to original Sherlock Holmes is definitely pushing it into the supernatural kind of mystical area. Beautiful, beautiful graphics, fun dialogue, really great puzzles, and just some really interesting concepts. One of those games where you have not one but really two mansions to explore. One is the one sort of set in the present when the case is being considered, and then the other one that is set in the past when the murders occurred. So in that, actually, it has a little bit in common with Mortlake Mansion, because it too has the sort of the real mansion, the real place, and the shadow mansion, as they call it. So what that adds, the fun part that it adds, it's that sort of doubles the number of spaces that you have to explore. And again, it has a really fabulous map, much like with the Mortlake Mansion. The Hound of the Baskervilles has a good, solid, interactive map that tells you where you have tasks to do and takes you there. And it is a pretty extensive map because at some point you actually go outside of the house. So you get to explore not just within the spaces of the house and walk through the hallways and the rooms and such, but eventually it takes you out. So that's fun. And definitely not straightforward. You have to pay attention. You can play in the easy mode, where you have the hidden object scenes and points of interest highlighted for you. But if you really want to have it challenging, do play in expert mode. Have fun with that. So 3 very fun, very different haunted houses. I definitely recommend to walk through all of them. It's Mortlake Mansion, Vampireville, and Sherlock Holmes, The Hound of Baskervilles. Until we meet again, this is Maria K., Misery Review Central. Bye.